Hi guys, it's Prosy Illustrations here. So this is a series on my channel where I research aquatic creatures that are underrated, I'll say, not really heard of by a lot of people, and I turn them into character designs. This is part 5 of this series, so let's jump into it. So the first creature that I picked for this part was the cone snail. Now, cone snails actually may be a lot more common than I thought initially. But for those that don't know, cone snails are very venomous sea snails, and they are from the Conidae family. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, meaning that they are in a family of predatory sea snails. There are over 900 species of cone snails, and an average of 16 new species are discovered yearly. I was curious about when exactly these snails were discovered. I like to use the year found as a good reference point of my designs, but I couldn't really find an exact date. It actually wasn't until I further researched and I found that we actually have fossils for cone snails dating back to the Eocene epoch, which was about 39 to 56 million years ago. So they've been around for quite a long time. So a few more facts on cone snails. Cone snails are carnivorous. They eat marine worms, small fish, mollusks, and even other cone snails. And they are known for using their radula tooth to attack and catch their prey. For context, the way that their tooth is structured, it's very interesting. It's basically like a harpoon on the inside of the snail's mouth, which is loaded with venom. And when they want or need to use it, then they fire the tooth from the proboscis, which is caused by a very strong muscle contraction. If the venom hits a fish, it'll paralyze it instantly. But with a human, depending on the type of cone snail and the venom injected, it can cause intense pain, numbness, muscle paralysis, tingling, respiratory failure, and in some cases, death. Cone snails also go by a different name as well, the cigarette snail, because it was exaggerated that if you get stung by a cone snail, then you'll only have enough time to smoke a cigarette before dying. Although I talk a big game about their venom and its serious symptoms if stung, cone snails' venom surprisingly has other uses in medical science. Conotoxins have been used for making pre-pharmaceutical medicines like ziconotide, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, I'm so sorry, is a pain reliever that was made from the venom of the magician cone snail, and it was approved for use in 2004 under the name Prialt. So at first, I was low-key stumped. For some reason, I could not tell you why. I was brought back to the third design that I've ever done for this series. I remember it. I did a redesign of the pygmy seahorse into a design. I gave her this long, mermaid dress, the way it, hugs her body from, the first half, but then it, slowly drapes downward. And surprise, shocker, I gave this design a dress. You don't understand. I have such a problem. I get so tempted to just want to give every single character that I design a dress. Half of my wardrobe, dresses, my obsession. Shut up and take my money. If I see a nice dress, me buy. My point is, I really like dresses. If you take me to a mall and I see dresses, I'm like a kid in a candy store. So I had designed the dress to look very similar to the shell itself, with half of it being the outside of the shell, with it wrapping around the body almost, so that we could somewhat see the inside of the shell, how it's that light pinkish color. And this was the reference point that I used for this cone snail design in particular. In my initial sketches, I initially gave this character a short bob, then I gave her long hair with a pointed top, but in the end I just gave her very swoopy, fluffy, flowy hair. I wanted it to wrap around her face, and I did this to capture the entrance point of the cone snail, the way that it kind of if you look at the opening, how it swoops up at the top and then goes downward. I really hope I'm making sense here. Please believe me for a second. Hear me out here. And I made her hair red, a darkish orangish red. I did this so that it would contrast nicely with the orange, and I made her eyes bright blue to also make the design pop a little bit more. I made her dress very long, and I designed the top of the dress to capture the bottom point of a cone snail. The main part of the dress, like the front of it, I made the designs and the patches on like the front of the cone snail in like my reference picture. And let me tell you, they were a huge pain in the butt. This took me so freaking long. So long. I don't know why I didn't just try to like look for a brush to help with that point, but I mean, what's done is done, I guess. So that was the front of the dress, and to capture like the inside of the shell, how it kind of has like a light pinkish color, I designed the small half of the dress to be like a lighter pink. I gave her freckles to capture the patches seen on the shell, and something that I wanted to add in, I gave her like a mole and like a beauty mark on her lip. It's just something that I really like to see in art. During the sketching process, I had many ideas on how I wanted to implement like the barb, like the radula tooth, because this felt like something unique that like I had to incorporate. My initial thought was maybe a hair piece, maybe like a weapon, make her like an assassin type character. I really liked that idea, but I wasn't sure how exactly I could incorporate that into this piece. But I was super close like to doing so. So the idea that I stuck with instead was to give this character a necklace in the shape of a barb instead. And I really like this a lot more since the placement, it would align with like how the radula tooth is like in the actual mouth of the cone snail. In the end, I'm a bit proud of this design. The only thing that I kind of regret is like making the dress so stiff. I didn't even like realize it until like the very end. I have a feeling that like if she were to like walk in this dress, then it would be like completely still. Like, you know, like those dresses that you see sometimes on the runway that just like don't move. That's what it looks like to me. I mean that in the most nicest way possible. But anyways, here she is, little cutie patootie. Let me know what you guys think. The next animal I picked was the sea pig, otherwise known as scotoplanes. Scotoplanes or sea pigs, they are a type of deep sea cucumber. It gets its name from its bodies being a light pink color, and sea pigs love the muddy seafloor. These creatures were discovered around 1872 to 1876 during the HMS Challenger expedition by Hjalmar Thiel. They can be found at around 22,000 feet below the ocean's surface. They have tube feet on its belly, its back, and around its mouth, like antennas almost. And these tubes can help them maneuver around the ocean floor, and it can help them find their food. Normally, sea pigs, their diet mainly consists of small dead animals or pieces of algae that could fall from the ocean surface and like down to the bottom. But if it's larger animals like a whale, then you will find many groups of sea pigs, they can use their sense of smell to locate it. Another name that has been given to them are deep sea babysitters, which is rightfully earned considering that we have actual evidence of sea pigs protecting young king crabs. There isn't really an exact reason why this occurs. It's speculated that king crabs just hide underneath sea pigs to be protected from predators. So this one made me more stumped. The universe really said, oh, you thought that first design was enough for you? Nah, let's give you round 2. It's time for round 2 in this bit. But anyways, so I started with my initial sketches. So starting with her hair, I initially played with giving her bangs that go over her eyes since sea pigs do not have eyes. And I need variety with my designs over here. I gave her like 2 strands of hair to capture the 2 antennas at the top of its head. I also did a design idea for like the dress I decided, because I wanted to also take inspiration as well from what outfits were popular or modern during the time of discovery. I like to use this as like a very good reference point of like how I want to move forward. I found like many dresses with a corseted top, a puffy skirt in the back with like puffy sleeves. They had like embedded flowers or something embedded at the bust line. You can see that I had some trouble with the skirt in the first sketch because it's just poofy and then flat underneath. I was thinking maybe about giving her like a layered skirt with the ends to look like the antennas of the sea pig, but I wasn't exactly sure how to make the layer underneath work, so I did another design instead. I had wanted to keep the hair in fashion like how it was around the 1870s, so I put her hair up in a bun. I gave her 2 long hair strands for the front of her face to capture the antennas that are by its mouth. And then I gave her a hairpiece to also capture their antennas at the top of its head. Since sea pigs are known for protecting juvenile king crabs, I gave her a red rose hairpiece to capture that red, and I didn't just want to like slap a hairpiece that looks like a crab. So I gave her a rose. And I made it like a brighter red so that the different shades of blue could pop. I also made her hair brown as well to contrast nicely with the blue as well. And I designed the dress to be somewhat similar to the second sketch. I gave her a corseted top with the bust line going like below the shoulders. I then designed the skirt to be poofy, and I designed it to look like the antennas of a sea pig, to just have them like poke out. I gave the skirt a darker blue, then I did a clipping mask on top and I gave it like a light pink color in the middle. And then finally I also gave her a choker necklace that also looks like the antennas. So in the end, you know, I don't know how to feel here. It's like that feeling you get where an idea looks good in your head, but then like it's executed and then it's like, that's not what I thought in the good old noggin. But ta-da! Here she is. Don't stare too much, please. So the next creature I wanted to talk about next is the pink see-through Fantasia. So I actually thought that this creature was a jellyfish, but I was wrong. These creatures are also sea cucumbers. They were discovered in 2007 near a volcano in the Celebes Sea. They are also known as the headless chickenfish, the headless chicken monster, or the Spanish dancer. They can grow to be about 4.3 to 9.8 inches long. They can be found all over the globe in different regions, and they were recently discovered in southern waters for the first time in October of 2018. So if I had to list perhaps one more thing, unlike normal sea cucumbers that usually sit at the bottom of the ocean floor, the pink see-through Fantasia has the ability to swim. I think day 1, after getting all of my wisdom teeth extracted, all of the 1, 2, 3, 4 of them being ripped, separated from my mouth. And I know all of you may be thinking, oh, why weren't you resting? I was bored. Anyways, so I think I actually had a very good idea on how I wanted to design this character. So instead of just getting into the sketching phase, let's just move on right to the designing process. So I designed her hair to look very similar to like the center area of the see-through Fantasia. I don't know like how to really describe it, but the centerpiece, how it kind of like goes up and then like downwards. I designed her hair to almost look like a wolf cut, so I gave her like curtain-like bangs that go like upward and then downward that stop at her ears. And then I gave her a second layer of hair underneath that curl towards her face. And then I made the rest of her hair like slightly longer that's hidden behind her back. I had a very small idea on making her eyes very similar to the actual like center of the see-through Fantasia, and I had that idea, but you know, it flew away because I didn't do it. So I'm gonna say this now, I'm very proud of how I designed the dress. I designed a very long dress that goes off the shoulders, and then I designed the center of the dress to be exactly like the center of the pink see-through Fantasia. I remember also having an idea to give her like see-through or like mesh sort of sleeves to make it almost look like more graceful, give it like that dancer sort of look. I think I would have liked that idea, but I had another idea that I stuck with instead, where I gave her a cape behind the dress. My idea with the cape was to capture like the small white spots that you can see on these creatures. It's a lot more visible if you look at them when they emit bioluminescence. And for the cape, I didn't put like a cloth. It's just a cape to be made entirely out of pearls, like a string of pearls. I made the line art for the dress like all the way down to be like a rainbow gradient. I didn't want it to be like too strong or too vibrant. As for the color palette, I gave her a pink dress and I gave the centerpiece like a darker red gradient that's actually like the center. And then finally, I gave her some freckles on her cheeks and shoulders to also capture those small spots. So I could not pick on a design that I was satisfied with. I have many exported files for the design. This is the first one without the cape design. I wanted to export a file to where like the dress was like the whole like center of attention, like without the cape. I did a second design that has the cape, which it looks alright. I think I was unsure on how I wanted the line art to look like for the pearls. But then I designed this one. For the third, fourth, and fifth designs, I made a bioluminescent dress idea that's glow in the dark because the pink see-through Fantasia actually does release bioluminescence as well. So I took inspiration from this picture and I somewhat liked the colors, but I realized that this was the photo in normal lighting. I then took a look at this picture instead, where the bioluminescence actually shows, and I designed the colors a lot more differently for the fourth and fifth one. I made the center of the dress a brighter orange, like the reference picture, and I designed a outer purple gradient like the reference picture. I didn't list it either, but to also capture the spots, which I don't know why I didn't do this before, I gave the last three designs like a little bit of glitter on the dress. And then the last thing that I changed for the last designs, I just changed the color of the pearls. I thought that the way that I listed it here would like match the color palette better. So I hope you guys all like the designs. I am a bit proud of this design in particular. I think it has to be like one of my favorites so far. I had a bit of fun making everything, but let me know what you guys think and which one was your favorite. The next and final creature I will be talking about is the owlfish, another creature that's a bit new to me, which I didn't realize was the whole point, because I was like, it was so funny, like I had a moment of awakening after like 4 or 5 parts out of doing this series. I was just like, dang it, I can't find any facts on these creatures, like why? And then I told myself that's the whole point of the video. Oh. So anyways, so these creatures are also called the stout black smelt, but they are most commonly known as the owlfish for their large eyes. So as for their distribution, according to Wikipedia, the site that our teachers say not to trust, but I'm gonna use it anyways, states that these creatures can be found from the east coast of Japan all the way to the Bering Sea. And for those of you that don't know where the Bering Sea is, because I didn't, it's right next to Alaska. I used the east coast of Japan as a part of my reference point for this design, and in doing so, I was directed to a very, very, in fact, big rabbit hole. But I shall get to that eventually, I promise. A few more fun facts: they tend to live in more colder temperatures and very deep below the surface of the ocean. They can be found at depths of 6,600 meters, so that's about over 19 to 21,000 feet. These creatures are also very small. They can grow to be about 6.5 inches, and they have a common defense mechanism of shedding their scales and swimming away. So as for the concept of this design, keep in mind that this first page, to start off, was made day 2 of having all of my teeth, my wisdom teeth, ripped out of my mouth, separated from my mouth. So please beware. So day 2 of said aftermath of my surgery, I was stumped. Very stumped, in fact. I had an initial idea of giving her like long flowy hair with a middle part. I gave her large eyes like the owlfish because duh. But the thing that was troubling me the most was deciding on what clothes to give her. This initial thought stumped me. So I was like, I'm gonna put my sketchbook away and rest. So that's what I did. I rested, recovered. I then worked on these other designs in order when the pain subsided. And then I arrived at this one. Thanks. I came back and looked at the same freaking sketch, trying to figure out what to do. How exactly can I proceed with this? So I instead was like, you know what? Let me go ahead and let me just design some new sketches. Let me just do some more research with a clear head from the start. So that's what I did. So these were the sketches that I designed instead and that I actually looked at. So I was feeling a lot more confident. And as I was researching, I found myself falling into a very, very big, in fact, rabbit hole. And I researched and found that basically, there were many different changes that happened in the late 1800s in Japan, and I would like to share them. I'll try to summarize everything as much as I can. This, I had mainly researched more because while I was looking to what, like the most common clothes were like back then, I found kimonos and I found Victorian dresses for some reason. To summarize everything as much as I can, and I really hope that I phrase everything and, like word everything correctly. In 1868, this was around the time the samurai era ended, and the Meiji period was extremely influential in Japan. It was a very influential time in Japan. The industry changed, the economy changed, and even the clothes changed. Of course, kimonos were extremely popular during this time, but with Western trade now, being put in the picture, and Japan's borders were finally opened after more than 200 years, there were many more fabrics that became very popular as well, like wool, and the use of synthetic dyes also became very popular. So let's get into the designing. So I know for sure that I wanted the eyes to be the star here. I wanted this to be the main character here. So especially since the eyes are what the owlfish is known for, I kept it in the final design like I did in the last 2 sketches. I gave her these large blue eyes, and I changed the line art for the eyes. I did a clipping mask on top to make it a lighter blue, and I added some yellow highlights to make the blue pop more. I also gave her very small freckles to capture like the small white dots that are on an owlfish's face. I'll put like a picture so that we could see it up close, but you could see it if you like look at their faces closely, how it's like above their eyes, how it's like underneath their eyes too. So I did that, and then moving on to her hair, I had a concept of giving her long flowy hair, but I stuck with a hairstyle that was a bit more common at the time. I picked her hair up and I gave her a headpiece that looks like scales, and I did this to capture those like loose scales that owlfish can shed to defend themselves. I gave her some very small bangs in the front of her face, but I gave her hair on like the side of her face to where like it could like wrap around her face. I did that to capture how the scales look. If you like look at their like side profiles, you could see like their scales like slowly come into their face. I really hope that makes sense. And then I also gave her that same middle part like I did in those 2 sketches for her hair, and I did that to capture how the scales also come in at like the top of its head. I really hope that makes sense. So back to the clothing. This really stumped me because I wasn't sure if I wanted to give her a kimono, a Western dress. I was thinking like, is there like some way that I could perhaps combine like the both of them? Because, like kimonos and like Victorian dresses, they were 2 clothes that were very prevalent and popular at the time. And I was just thinking like, I really want there to be like some way that I could capture both. And then that was when I discovered the tea gown. So tea gowns, they were actually a piece of clothing that was commonly worn at home, and these dresses were first made in the mid 18th century, with the inspiration actually being the Japanese kimono. You can see that there's a lot of like elegance with the dress. I think it's a very beautiful gown, and unlike normal dresses back then where a maid would normally have to step in to assist or would have like a corset that had to be attached to it, these dresses were the opposite. So I gave this character a tea gown. I was debating on making the dress a darker blue, a lighter blue, but I instead made it a cool toned brown. That way it could look like the actual skin tone of the owlfish. And I did a darker gradient at the bottom of the dress. It felt like if I made it too solid, then the colors wouldn't really like blend together nicely. Then I made the poofy parts on the shoulders a bit more rounder, and I made it to almost look like the fins on the sides of an owlfish's body. And then I got to the designs of the dress, and that was something that had stumped me for a little bit. I was thinking about how I could design the patterns and the designs on like the outer part of the dress. And then that's what I thought, I wonder if I could include owls somehow in the designs. Get it? 'Cause owl, fish. Okay, I'm gonna move on. And honestly, nothing super big from what I found. There were some pretty big like literature books that were released during that time, but owls back then, they actually did have a lot of symbolism. They symbolized intuition, wisdom, and knowledge. So I designed the outer part of the dress to have owl feathers in it, and I gave it a slightly darker color so it wasn't so vibrant on the dress. Finally, I gave this character a light blue highlight all over because you can see in like some pictures that they have a light shine on them when like the light hits their scales. So honestly, I think this is probably one of my favorite designs I've ever done. It actually felt like I did experiment a bit with this design. You may have noticed my art style change a bit throughout this video, but I actually had a lot of fun. But yeah, I think she ended up really being one of my favorites. But anyways, here she is. I would certainly love to have a lovely tea party with her, but I really like her. Let me know what you guys think. Alright, so here are all 4 of the designs that I did for this video. Thank you guys so much for staying until the end and for listening to me. It is sincerely appreciated. You guys are so awesome. It really does mean a lot to me that you guys have supported me for this long, and you guys are just so awesome, and I really appreciate you all. Anyways, I hope that you guys all enjoyed this video. Feel free to like and subscribe to see more of me, and as always, stay hydrated, stay safe, and of course, stay tuned, you guys. Bye!